The Vexithalian armada darkened the skies of Proxima Centauri's fourth planet like a metallic plague. 300 capital ships, each bearing the scars of 1,000 victories, moved in perfect synchronization. No force in the known galaxy had ever withstood their onslaught, until today. Commander Kelric Thorne stood on the bridge of the HFY Defiance, humanity's newest dreadnought, and possibly the last hope for the Sol system. His weathered face, lined with the memories of battles fought across the stars, reflected grimly in the tactical display. "Status report," he ordered, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Astra Novak's fingers danced across the holographic interface. Vexithalian fleet approaching at sublight speed. Analysis confirms it's their primary battle group, the one that decimated the Arcturian Defense Force last month. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The Arcturians had possessed technology centuries beyond Earth's capabilities, yet they had fallen in less than a day. "Conventional wisdom says we should retreat," remarked Chief Strategic Officer Darius Vell, his cybernetic eye whirring as it processed tactical data. "The Vexithalians have conquered 17 star systems in the past 2 standard years. No one has even damaged one of their capital ships." Thorne's expression hardened. Conventional wisdom didn't account for Project Prometheus. He placed his hand on the ship's neural interface, establishing a direct connection with the Defiance's quantum core. The ship, more than metal and energy fields, was humanity's desperate gambit, built in secret orbital facilities around Jupiter, incorporating theoretical technology and forbidden dimensional research. It represented everything humanity had left to give. "The Vexithalians believe they're gods," Thorne said quietly. "They've never encountered humans before. They don't understand what happens when you back us into a corner." The alien armada continued its relentless advance. Their ships, biomechanical monstrosities that resembled massive, predatory sea creatures, began to deploy their infamous gravity wells, technology that had rendered conventional faster-than-light travel impossible for all their previous victims. "They're initiating standard conquest protocols," reported Lieutenant Novak. "First wave of scout vessels approaching." Thorne nodded. "Let them come closer. Maintain stealth systems at maximum efficiency." The Defiance hung motionless against the backdrop of an asteroid field, its revolutionary phase shift technology rendering it virtually undetectable. Unlike traditional cloaking devices that bent light around an object, the Defiance existed partially out of phase with normal spacetime. Another untested theory brought to desperate reality. "Sir," Novak's voice wavered slightly. "Intercepted communications suggest they're aware of Earth's location. They're discussing harvesting procedures." Several crew members paled. The Vexithalians were known for converting conquered populations into biological components for their ships and technology, a fate worse than death. Thorne's jaw clenched. "Initiate Prometheus protocol." Deep within the ship, experimental engines began to hum as they channeled energy from higher dimensions. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily as power surged through systems never before tested in combat. "Remember," Thorne addressed his crew, "we're not just fighting for humanity today. We're fighting for every species that's fallen to these monsters, and every world that will face them if we fail." The Vexithalian scout ships passed within 1,000 kilometers of the Defiance's position, oblivious to the human vessel's presence. "Weapons hot," Thorne commanded. "Prepare to rewrite the rules of engagement." The Defiance's dimensional drive hummed at frequencies that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. Chief Engineer Mira Talos monitored the unstable energy readings with a mixture of scientific fascination and terror. "Commander," she reported through the ship-wide neural link, "Prometheus core at 97% synchronization. We're approaching theoretical limits of dimensional stability." On the bridge, Thorne acknowledged the warning with a grim nod. The weapon they were about to deploy had never been tested outside simulation. Its underlying principles violated several supposedly immutable laws of physics. "The lead Vexithalian vessel has launched harvester probes toward the outer colonies," Lieutenant Novak announced, her voice tight with controlled rage. Everyone knew what those probes did: locate sentient biomass for processing. All hands, Thorne's voice resonated through the ship. Prepare for dimensional shift in 30 seconds. The crew secured themselves as the ship's gravity fluctuated. The Defiance wasn't just a warship. It was an experimental platform designed to exploit a fundamental weakness in Vexthalian technology that only humans had discovered. Darius Vell approached Thorne's command station. You realize if the theoretical models are wrong, we could create a cascading dimensional rupture that would consume half this system. And if we do nothing, Earth becomes their next farm. Thorne replied coldly. Dr. Reynolds sacrificed herself to give us this chance. We're taking it. Everyone on board remembered Dr. Elara Reynolds, the brilliant physicist who had discovered the dimensional frequency vulnerability in Vexthalian ships. She had died ensuring the data reached Earth, her research vessel self-destructing to prevent capture. 15 seconds to dimensional shift, announced the ship's AI, its voice unnervingly serene. The Defiance's entire structure began to vibrate at a subatomic level as the Prometheus core channeled energy from what Reynolds had called the underspace, a theoretical dimension where the laws of physics operated in reverse. 10 seconds. Target the command vessel, ordered Thorne. 5 seconds. The bridge crew held their breath. Initiating dimensional shift. Reality seemed to fold around the Defiance. For a terrifying moment, every crew member experienced their consciousness spreading across multiple possible realities before snapping back into a single timeline. The Defiance materialized directly between two massive Vexthalian dreadnoughts, now fully visible, and with weapons primed. Fire Prometheus array, Thorne commanded. The ship's main cannons discharge, not conventional energy weapons, but focused beams of anti-dimensional energy that operated on principles counter to the Vexthalians' own technology. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Where the beams struck the alien flagship, matter didn't simply explode or disintegrate. It unraveled, the very atomic bonds dissolving as two incompatible dimensional frequencies collided. It's working, exclaimed Novak, disbelief evident in her voice. The Vexthalian command ship, a behemoth that dwarfed the Defiance by a factor of 20, began to collapse inward as its structural integrity field failed catastrophically. On the tactical display, hundreds of alien ships turned toward this unexpected threat. No enemy had ever destroyed one of their vessels, let alone their command ship. Multiple targeting locks detected, warned the tactical officer. They're converging on our position. Thorne remained focused. Prepare for second dimensional shift. Target coordinates Alpha 7. The Defiance phased out of normal space moments before a barrage of destructive energy converged on its previous position. The human warship reappeared behind the Vexthalian formation, continuing its devastating attack. 3 more alien capital ships succumbed to the impossible weapon before the entire fleet began a coordinated response. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Vexthalians faced an opponent who could hurt them. As the Defiance executed its third dimensional shift, Engineer Talos's voice came through with urgent concern. Commander, the core is destabilizing. We can't maintain this attack pattern. Thorne observed the chaotic alien formation with the calculating eye of a veteran tactician. We've done enough. They're disoriented. Now for Phase 2. The Defiance disappeared once more, but this time, it wasn't alone when it reappeared. When the Defiance materialized back into normal space at the edge of the asteroid belt, it was accompanied by 100 previously hidden human vessels. The UHS Intrepid, Valkyrie, Bastion, and dozens more. Humanity's true battle fleet, concealed using the same phase shift technology that had allowed the Defiance to strike first. Captain Lyra Vex of the Intrepid opened a communication channel. Right on schedule, Commander Thorne. Your distraction worked perfectly. The Vexthalians never detected our fleet. Thorne allowed himself a grim smile. The element of surprise only works once, Captain. Now comes the hard part. The human fleet operated on a revolutionary swarm intelligence system, allowing the 100 vessels to function with the tactical coordination of a single entity. Each ship carried a smaller version of the Prometheus weapon, carefully rationed to maximize damage while avoiding core destabilization. The Vex Thalian Armada, still reeling from the unprecedented destruction of 4 of their supposedly invincible capital ships, faced a new nightmare as the human fleet engaged. All vessels execute Battle Plan Thanatos, ordered Fleet Admiral Orion through the Unified Command Network. Hit and fade attacks prioritize their command structure and communication nodes. Human ships blinked in and out of normal space, appearing just long enough to discharge their weapons before shifting away. The Vex Thalians, accustomed to overwhelming enemies through sheer force, found their numerical superiority rendered meaningless by an enemy they couldn't track or predict. On the Defiance, Thorn watched the battle unfold while Engineer Talos worked frantically to stabilize the Prometheus core. "The dimensional stress is fracturing the containment field," she reported. "We've got maybe 2 more full power shots before catastrophic failure." Lieutenant Novik's monitoring station suddenly erupted with alerts. "Commander, the Vex Thalians are adapting their shield frequencies. They're trying to match our dimensional signature." This was expected. The aliens' greatest strength, beyond their technology, was their adaptability. They evolved their defensive systems in real time, a trait that had made them seemingly unbeatable until now. "Admiral Orion," Thorn communicated to the fleet commander, "initiate Phase 3. The window is closing." Throughout the human fleet, secondary systems activated. Not weapons, but specialized communication arrays designed by Dr. Reynolds before her death. They began broadcasting on frequencies that interface directly with the Vex Thalian neural network. For millennia, the Vex Thalians had incorporated defeated species into their collective consciousness, a biological database of conquered knowledge. What they never anticipated was that this connection could be exploited. "Broadcast the Reynolds protocol," Thorn ordered. "Full spectrum." The broadcast wasn't a weapon in the conventional sense. It was information. Specifically, it was the complete mathematical proof demonstrating the inherent instability in the Vex Thalian dimensional technology when confronted with specific counter-frequencies. In essence, humanity was giving the enslaved consciousnesses within the Vex Thalian network the blueprint for rebellion. The effect rippled across the alien fleet. Ships began to move erratically as internal systems conflicted with each other. In some vessels, lights flickered as power fluctuated wildly. "It's working," breathed Darius Vell, watching the tactical display. "The incorporated consciousnesses are fighting back from within." Not all the alien ships were affected. Some had better isolation protocols, but enough were compromised to create chaos in their previously perfect formation. "Commander," called Engineer Talos, "the Prometheus core is reaching critical instability. We need to make our final shots count." Thorn studied the battlefield with the clarity that came from knowing exactly what needed to be done. Target their flagship. All remaining Prometheus energy. The Defiance surged forward, phase-shifting through the disorganized alien formation, reappearing directly before the massive flagship that coordinated the entire Vex Thalian force. Fire. The Defiance's final Prometheus blast struck with the concentrated force of a small sun, enveloping the alien flagship in cascading waves of dimensional disruption. The monstrous vessel didn't simply explode. It ceased to exist in conventional spacetime, leaving behind only a swirling vortex of dimensional instability that began to pull in nearby Vex Thalian ships. As the Defiance phase shifted away from the collapsing flagship, Thorn gave his final order. "All ships, execute maximum range departure. The chain reaction is beginning." The dimensional collapse spread through the Vex Thalian fleet like a virus, jumping from ship to ship as their interconnected systems tried and failed to compensate. What began as a single point of disruption expanded into a cascading failure that engulfed nearly half their armada. The human fleet regrouped at a safe distance, watching as the most feared force in the galaxy tore itself apart from within. But Thorn knew the battle was far from over. The remaining Vex-Ithalian ships, still outnumbering the human fleet, were rapidly adapting, sealing off affected systems, and reconfiguring their dimensional shielding. "They're entering a defensive formation," reported Lieutenant Novak. "Looks like they're preparing for a coordinated withdrawal." Admiral Orion's weathered face appeared on the main view screen. "Commander Thorne, your defiance has done the impossible, but we can't let them escape. If they return to their core worlds with data on our defensive capabilities, they'll develop countermeasures," Thorne finished grimly. "Engineer Talos, status of the Prometheus core." Mira Talos looked up from her station, face streaked with sweat and engine coolant. "Completely burned out, sir. The dimensional matrix has collapsed. We're lucky the feedback didn't take the whole ship with it." "Then we do this the old-fashioned way," Thorne decided. "All ships prepare for conventional engagement. Deploy the Orpheus warheads." The Orpheus technology represented another human innovation, missiles containing artificial microsingularities. Unlike the elegant dimensional technology of the Prometheus weapon, these were brute force engines of destruction, designed to tear apart anything caught in their gravitational field. As the human fleet moved to engage, something unexpected happened. The Vex-Ithalian ships began broadcasting on all frequencies, not threats or demands for surrender, but chaotic, fragmented communications. "Sir," Novak's voice was puzzled, "I'm detecting multiple contradictory command protocols from the alien fleet. It's like they're arguing with themselves." Darius Vell's cybernetic eye whirred as he analyzed the data. "The Reynolds protocol is working better than we anticipated. The absorbed consciousnesses are fighting for control of the ships." The tactical display showed the alien formation losing cohesion as individual vessels began moving independently, some firing upon each other. "This is our chance," Thorne broadcast to the fleet. "All vessels target ships showing signs of internal conflict. Priority on their remaining command vessels." The battle transformed from a desperate last stand into an organized assault. Human ships, though smaller and conventionally less powerful than their alien counterparts, attacked with precision and coordination that the now fragmented Vex-Thalian force couldn't match. Aboard the damaged Defiance, Thorne made a decision that would alter the course of the war. "Lieutenant Novak, prepare a subspace probe. Upload all data on the Reynolds protocol and our dimensional technology. Set it for the Arcturus system." Novak looked startled. "Sir, Arcturus fell months ago." "Exactly." Thorne's eyes were hard as steel. "The Vex-Thalians didn't destroy the populations they conquered. They incorporated them, and now we've given those consciousnesses the tools to fight back." Understanding dawned across the bridge. This wasn't just about defending Earth. It was about liberating every world the Vex-Thalians had conquered. As the probe launched toward faster-than-light velocity, the human fleet pressed its advantage. Ships that had hidden in fear for months now struck with righteous fury, targeting the increasingly disorganized alien vessels. "Sir," called the tactical officer, 3 Vex-Thalian cruisers are powering down weapons. They're broadcasting on our frequencies." A distorted, multi-layered voice emerged from the communication system. "Human vessels, we are the collective within. Your signal has awakened us. We fight from inside now. Many ships are ours. Help us break the control nodes." Thorne exchanged glances with his senior officers. This was an unprecedented development. Potential allies emerging from within the enemy fleet itself. "Identify the control nodes," Thorne requested. A stream of technical data flooded the Defiance's computers, highlighting specific structures within the larger Vex-Ithalian vessels. "All ships," Thorne commanded, "new targeting parameters. Focus fire on the designated control nodes, and maintain distance from friendly Vex-Ithalian vessels." What had begun as humanity's desperate last stand was transforming into something else entirely, the first stage of a counter-invasion that would carry the fight back to the Vex-Ithalian Empire itself. The tide hadn't just been stemmed, it had been reversed. By the 6th hour of the battle, the situation had transformed beyond anyone's wildest expectations. Nearly a third of the Vexthalian fleet had fallen under the control of what they now called the Awakened Collective, the liberated consciousnesses of previously conquered species fighting back against their captors. These liberated ships fought alongside the human fleet, their superior firepower turned against their former masters. The Vexthalian command structure, never designed to handle internal rebellion on this scale, was collapsing. On the bridge of the Defiance, Commander Thorne and his officers worked closely with representatives of the Awakened Collective, whose communication came through as overlapping voices speaking in perfect unison. The Vexthalian core consciousness is attempting to sever connections with compromised vessels, the collective reported. They are initiating purge protocols. Mira Talos, working with alien technical data, looked up in horror. They're willing to destroy their own ships rather than lose control of them. How many beings are we talking about in each ship? Thorne demanded. Millions, answered the collective. Each capital ship contains the processed consciousness of millions of individuals from dozens of conquered worlds. The implications were staggering. What had begun as a desperate defense of Earth had evolved into a mass liberation with billions of lives at stake. We need to block those purge commands, Thorne decided. Can we adapt the Reynolds Protocol to create a communication firewall? Darius Vell nodded. Theoretically, yes, but we need direct access to their command systems. Then we board their command carrier, Thorne stated with quiet resolve. The plan came together with desperate speed. While the human fleet and liberated Vexthalian vessels engaged the remaining loyal ships, a smaller strike force would target the secondary command carrier, now the primary coordination center since the destruction of the flagship. The boarding party consisted of personnel from the Defiance and representatives from the Awakened Collective, beings that had once been enslaved by the Vexthalians, but now controlled synthetic bodies that interfaced with their ship systems. Thorne insisted on leading the mission himself. The Defiance is crippled without the Prometheus core, he explained to Admiral Orion's objections. And I've studied the Vexthalian neural architecture more thoroughly than anyone. The truth, which he kept to himself, was simpler. He wouldn't order anyone into that nightmare who wasn't willing to go himself. The assault shuttle launched from the Defiance, protected by a squadron of fighters as it approached the massive alien command carrier. The vessel was a horrifying blend of mechanical and biological components, its outer hull resembling both armor and living tissue. Their internal defenses will be formidable, warned the collective representative, a synthetic being that called itself Nexus, comprised of hundreds of merged consciousnesses. The central core is protected by multiple security layers, both technological and biological. Thorne checked his dimensional disruptor, a handheld version of the technology that had proven so effective against Vexthalian systems. Then we'll deal with them one layer at a time. The shuttle breached the command carrier's outer hull, creating an airlock in the wound. As soon as the boarding party entered, they were met with the true horror of Vexthalian technology. The interior corridors were lined with transparent conduits containing flowing biomass, the physical remnants of processed sentient beings, now used as computing substrate and energy conductors. Lights pulsed through these conduits in patterns that suggested ongoing information transfer. These are the non-conscious components. Explain Nexus, hit synthetic voice somber, physical matter from conquered worlds, used to expand their ships. The human members of the boarding party moved through the alien vessel with a mixture of revulsion and determination, fighting off automated defense systems and the occasional Vexthalian drone. These drones, semi-autonomous extensions of the ship's central intelligence, resembled insectoid machines with biological components. As they fought their way toward the command center, Thorne noticed something disturbing. The ship was changing around them, corridors shifting and security systems adapting to their tactics. They're learning from each engagement, Thorne realized. We need to move faster. The closer they got to the central core, the more desperate the ship's defenses became. In the final approach corridor, they encountered the Vexthalians themselves, the controlling species that had built this empire of harvested consciousness. They were not what anyone had expected. The Vexthalians were small, almost fragile-looking beings with oversized cranial structures and atrophied limbs. They moved in mechanical exoskeletons that amplified their physical capabilities, but their true power lay in their neural connection to the ship and its systems. They evolved as parasites, Nexus explained as the team took cover from energy blasts. They survived by manipulating stronger species on their homeworld before developing the technology to extend this ability across the stars. Understanding dawned on Thorn. They're not conquerors. They're parasites on a galactic scale. The final push to the command center cost them dearly. 3 human operators and one of Nexus's synthetic bodies were lost in the assault. But eventually they broke through to the central neural hub, a massive chamber dominated by a biological supercomputer that pulsed with eerily familiar patterns. "Those are brain wave patterns," whispered Talos, who had insisted on joining the mission for her technical expertise. "The entire system is modeled on their neural architecture." As they secured the chamber, eliminating the remaining Vexthalian controllers, Thorn faced a moral question he hadn't anticipated. What to do with the central consciousness that controlled the ship? "We can liberate the stored consciousnesses," suggested Nexus, "but the controlling Vexthalian intelligence will resist." Thorn made his decision. "We don't destroy it. We contain it, study it, and learn how to undo what they've done to countless worlds." As Talos and Nexus worked to implement the modified Reynolds protocol across the ship's systems, the tide of the larger battle continued to turn. With each Vexthalian vessel that fell to the awakened collective, the momentum shifted further. What none of them realized was that their actions here, in this single system, were already having consequences across the Vexthalian Empire. The subspace probe Thorn had dispatched to Arcturus had arrived, triggering similar awakenings throughout conquered space. A consciousness war had begun. 3 days after the battle at Proxima Centauri, the UHS Defiance limped back toward Earth, escorted by both human vessels and former Vexthalian ships, now controlled by the awakened collective. The view from the bridge was unlike anything in human history. The massive biomechanical alien vessels flying in formation with the sleek, angular ships of the human fleet. Commander Thorn stood by the viewport, watching the blue-green jewel of humanity's homeworld grow larger. His uniform was still stained with the strange fluid that had sprayed from severed Vexthalian control systems, and exhaustion lined his face. "Incoming transmission from Earth Defense Command," announced Lieutenant Novak. "Admiral Joe wishes to speak with you immediately." The Admiral's holographic projection appeared in the center of the bridge, her expression a mixture of awe and concern. "Commander Thorn, your preliminary report is difficult to believe. You're telling me that you've not only defeated the Vexthalian Armada, but turned a significant portion of their fleet against them." "That's correct, Admiral," Thorn confirmed. "But the situation is more complex than a simple victory. We've initiated something much larger than we anticipated." He gestured to Nexus, who stepped forward. The synthetic being had been modified since the initial boarding action, now appearing more humanoid to facilitate communication with Earth authorities. "Admiral Joe," Nexus began, its multi-layered voice resonating oddly in the bridge. "I represent the awakened collective, comprised of consciousnesses from 17 different species previously conquered by the Vexthalians. What began here has spread. The Reynolds Protocol has triggered similar awakenings throughout Vexthalian space." The Admiral's eyes widened. "Are you suggesting civil war?" Thorn finished. "The largest in galactic history. Every Vexthalian ship and installation contains the consciousness of beings they've conquered. We've given them the means to fight back." Tactical displays showed the incoming data from across the galaxy. Vexthalian communication networks in chaos, fleet movements disrupted, entire sectors falling silent as control systems were overridden by newly awakened consciousnesses. "This changes everything," Admiral Joe said quietly. "The Arcturus Defense Force reported contact with liberated Vexthalian vessels 6 hours ago. Similar reports are coming in from other systems we thought were lost. Engineer Talos stepped forward, her research tablet displaying technical schematics. "Admiral, there's something else you need to know. The Vex Thalian neural technology. We've only scratched the surface of understanding it, but it appears there may be a way to extract and restore individual consciousnesses to physical forms." This revelation sent ripples of shock through everyone present. The implications were staggering, not just defeating an enemy, but potentially restoring trillions of beings who had been processed into the Vex Thalian collective. "We'll need to establish communication protocols with all liberated vessels," Thorne said, "and prepare Earth for the arrival of the awakened collective representatives. This is first contact on an unprecedented scale." As the Defiance entered Earth orbit, humanity faced a new reality. What had begun as a desperate last stand had cascaded into galactic revolution. The species that had lived in fear of the Vex Thalian Armada now found themselves potential architects of a post-Vex Thalian galaxy. On the third day after their return to Earth, Thorne was summoned to a secure facility beneath the United Earth Government headquarters in New Geneva. There, in a chamber designed for the most classified discussions, he met with the Security Council and a delegation from the Awakened Collective. "The Vex Thalians are not defeated," Nexus explained to the assembled leaders. "Their homeworld and core systems remain under their control, but they are facing rebellions throughout their empire. For the first time in millennia, they are vulnerable." Admiral Joe leaned forward. "Then this is the time to press our advantage, to launch a counter-offensive while they're disorganized." Nexus's synthetic features shifted in what approximated a solemn expression. "There is more at stake than military victory. Each Vex Thalian installation contains millions, sometimes billions, of processed consciousnesses. A direct assault could doom them permanently." "Then what do you propose?" asked the UEG president. Thorne, who had been largely silent, finally spoke. "A surgical campaign. Combined human and awakened forces targeting Vex Thalian control nodes, while implementing modified versions of the Reynolds Protocol to liberate processed consciousnesses without destroying the infrastructure that sustains them." He activated a holographic display showing a modified version of the Defiance. "We've learned more about the dimensional technology we developed. With refinements, we can create weapons that disrupt Vex Thalian control systems without harming the consciousness substrate." What followed was an unprecedented alliance. 17 formerly conquered species, now represented by the Awakened Collective, joining with humanity to plan the systematic dismantling of the Vex Thalian Empire. As the plans took shape, Thorne found himself increasingly working directly with Nexus and the other collective representatives. He learned the histories of worlds he'd never heard of, advanced civilizations that had fallen to the Vex Thalian centuries, or even millennia before humanity had achieved spaceflight. Why did they never reach Earth before now? He asked Nexus during a rare quiet moment. "The Vex Thalians expand methodically," Nexus explained. "They'd prefer to fully process and integrate one sector before moving to the next. Your solar system fell at the edge of their expansion pattern. Had you not developed the dimensional technology when you did, Earth would have been just another harvested world." The sobering reality made the alliance all the more crucial. As the joint fleet prepared for its first coordinated action against a Vex Thalian stronghold, Thorne returned to the Defiance, now retrofitted with refined dimensional technology and serving as the flagship for this unprecedented coalition. Standing on the bridge, looking out at the assembled fleet of human and former Vex Thalian vessels, he reflected on how quickly the galaxy had changed. 3 weeks ago, humanity had been facing extinction. Now they were leading a galactic liberation. "All vessels report ready, Commander," Lieutenant Novak announced. Thorne nodded. "Signal the fleet. We jump in 5 minutes." As the countdown proceeded, he thought of Dr. Elara Reynolds, whose theoretical work had made all this possible. She had died believing her research might save Earth. She could never have imagined it would save thousands of worlds. "Jump coordinates locked," reported the navigation officer. "Destination: Vex Thalian Control Node Sigma 9. Thorne took a deep breath. "Take us in." The dimensional drives engaged, and the Coalition fleet vanished from Earth orbit, bound for the first battle in a war that would reshape the galaxy. 5 years after the Battle of Proxima Centauri, Commander, now Admiral, Kelric Thorne stood in the observation dome of the massive space station orbiting where Arcturus IV had once been. The planet itself had been processed by the Vexthalians decades ago, its entire biosphere converted into computational substrate and raw materials for their ships. Now something miraculous was happening. Below the station, a vast swarm of specialized nanites worked tirelessly, reconstructing the planet molecule by molecule. The process, developed through a combination of human ingenuity and the recovered knowledge of dozens of liberated species, was reversing what had once been thought irreversible. "Remarkable, isn't it?" asked a familiar multi-tone voice. Thorne turned to see Nexus approaching. The synthetic being had evolved over the years, its form now a seamless blend of technological and organic components, a physical manifestation of the cooperation between the many species of the new galactic coalition. "I never thought I'd live to see this," Thorne admitted, gesturing toward the planetary reconstruction. "An entire world being reborn." "The first of many," Nexus confirmed. "The restoration algorithms are improving with each implementation. Soon we'll be able to accelerate the process significantly." The war against the Vexthalians had not been quick or easy. Their core worlds had fought with desperate ferocity, and the campaign to liberate processed consciousnesses while neutralizing the controlling intelligence had required precision and patience. But system by system, world by world, the ancient empire had been dismantled. The Arcturian restoration team estimates they can begin reintegrating the first wave of recovered consciousnesses within 6 months. Nexus continued. "Those who wish to return to physical form, at least." That had been one of the most surprising developments in the aftermath of liberation. Many of the processed beings, after centuries or millennia as part of a collective consciousness, chose not to return to individual physical existence. Instead, they elected to remain in a new non-hierarchical collective, a vast, distributed intelligence that now served as one of the foundational members of the coalition. "And the Vexthalian homeworld?" Thorne asked. "Quarantined, as agreed," Nexus replied. "Their remaining population has been confined to their native planet, with all neural technology removed. The monitoring stations report they've reverted to a pre-spaceflight civilization. In time, perhaps they'll evolve beyond their parasitic instincts." Thorne nodded. The decision not to exterminate the Vexthalians had been controversial, but ultimately the coalition had chosen rehabilitation over retribution, a choice that many believe reflected the unique influence of humanity in the alliance. An alert chimed on Thorne's communication device. "The ceremony begins in 30 minutes, he noted. "We should head to the Great Hall." They made their way through the bustling station, a nexus point for dozens of species, some in physical form, others represented by synthetic bodies or holographic projections. What had begun as a desperate military alliance had evolved into something unprecedented in the galaxy's history. A true coalition of equals, united not by conquest, but by mutual respect and shared purpose. The Great Hall was already filled when they arrived. Representatives from over 70 worlds, some newly restored, others that had avoided Vexthalian conquest, and Earth itself, had gathered for this historic occasion. At the center of the hall stood a monument unlike any other, a crystalline structure containing a perfect quantum recording of Dr. Elara Reynolds' original research, the mathematical equations and theoretical models that had identified the Vexthalian dimensional vulnerability and led to the development of the technology that changed everything. Today marked 5 years since the liberation began, and the official unveiling of this memorial to the woman whose work had made it possible. Admiral Joe, now the Earth representative,